Federal courts are slamming the brakes on President Trump's mass deportation push, with judges across the country issuing rulings that block key elements of the administration's aggressive immigration enforcement strategy. In one major blow, a New York panel appointed a new federal prosecutor in Albany after finding Trump's nominee was serving unlawfully, only for the Justice Department to fire the appointee hours later. This comes amid reports that ICE agents are pulling back from high-profile operations in states like Minnesota, where Tom Homan, head of border operations, announced the departure of 700 agents, signaling a softer approach to avoid political backlash ahead of midterms. Meanwhile, voluntary departures by detainees have surged, with thousands like Vilma Palacios giving up their cases and leaving the U.S., rather than face prolonged detention, according to a CBS News analysis. The Epstein files continue to dominate headlines, with the Justice Department releasing millions of documents that have survivors and lawmakers demanding answers. Attorney General Pam Bondi faced intense grilling in Congress, accused by a high-profile House Democrat of spying on her search history while reviewing the unredacted files, as Ghislaine Maxwell invoked the Fifth Amendment during a closed deposition. New batches revealed disturbing photos and communications, prompting questions about why no third parties have been prosecuted despite allegations of trafficking to others, and victims criticizing the DOJ for exposing their identities while shielding perpetrators. Bondi defended the handling fiercely, pivoting to praise Trump's economic record and stock market gains, but Democrats say the files show a pattern of mishandling investigations. President Trump is turning up the heat on his own party over tariffs, threatening primary challenges against any Republican voting against them after the House rebuked his Canada tariffs. Posting on Truth Social, Trump warned that lawmakers defying tariffs would seriously suffer the consequences come election time, citing a 78% drop in the trade deficit and record highs for the Dow at 50,000 and S&P at Titsen. Democrats are seizing the moment, planning constant Senate votes to weaponize the issue against vulnerable GOP incumbents, especially as top Trump officials sold stocks just before tariff news broke. This internal rift highlights growing unease in Republican ranks, with some distancing from Trump amid economic affordability concerns and unpopular policies. Immigration tensions are boiling over in courtrooms and communities as lawsuits pile up against ICE tactics. The ACLU and Latino families filed a class action suit alleging aggressive raids near sensitive sites like schools and churches, while a 5-year-old girl named Amalia was hospitalized with a life-threatening illness after detention before release. Federal judges have undercut indefinite detention policies, leading to a deluge of releases, and nurses protesting hospital trade associations were arrested in Manhattan over related funding fights. In Texas, a Democrat flipped a state Senate seat Trump won by 17 points, signaling potential midterm vulnerabilities for the GOP on immigration overreach. Economic indicators paint a mixed picture under the Trump administration, with January. Job growth surprising at 130,000, added beating expectations and showing labor market resilience, but layoffs spiking to 109,000, the highest since the Great Recession. Challenger grade data reveals a 205% month-over-month jump tied to tariff uncertainties and sector shifts, while reports show the typical American worker has just $1,000 saved for retirement, underscoring long-term affordability crises. Trump touts stock surges as proof of success, but critics point to rising costs from trade policies and partial government shutdown risks over ICE funding deadlines. Turning to the economy, January's jobs report delivered a surprise boost, with employers adding 130,000 positions, far exceeding the forecasted 60,000 and pushing the unemployment rate down to 4.3%. Healthcare led the gains once again, while manufacturing and government hiring provided additional support amid tariff uncertainties. The Congressional Budget Office warns of worsening federal deficits, projecting a $100 billion higher shortfall for 2026 and $1.4 trillion more through 2035 due to unchanged tax and spending laws, with real GDP growth pegged at just 2.2% this year, well below the Trump administration's optimistic 3 to 4% outlook. Treasury yields held steady as investors digested the data, but layoffs hit a post-recession high of 109,000, up 205% from December, signaling caution in sectors hit by trade policies. Consumer prices rose moderately via the PCE index at 2.8%, above the Fed's 2% target, but cooling from peaks, with the Federal Reserve pausing rate cuts to monitor inflation in shelter and services. Tax refunds are expected to be larger this year, potentially juicing spending, alongside incentives for AI and infrastructure hiring, though experts like those at Barclays predict steady but not explosive growth. A measles outbreak is gripping the nation, with the CDC reporting 733 confirmed cases, 4 times the typical annual average in just weeks, prompting top health officials to urge vaccinations amid exposures at events like the March for Life rally in D.C. States from New York to California are seeing clusters, with Mexico's Jalisco issuing mask mandates in schools due to spread near World Cup venues, and U.S. officials warning of risks to unvaccinated communities. The Trump administration announced TrumpRx, a new website for discounted prescription drugs directly from manufacturers, aiming to ease costs as part of broader health initiatives. Crime stories from last year still echo into 2026, shaping national debates on security and justice. Brian Kohberger's guilty plea in the University of Idaho stabbings avoided a death penalty trial, but left families seeking closure on the 2022 murders of 4 students. The ISIS-inspired New Orleans truck attack that killed 14 on New Year's remains a stark reminder of imported terror threats, with an Iraqi ISIS member arrested for inciting the shooter, Shamsuddin Jabbar. Luigi Mangioni's case, tied to the United Healthcare CEO killing, continues to fuel anti-insurance rage, while Epstein and Maxwell's shadows linger over elite accountability. On the foreign front, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is set to discuss potential Iran strikes with President Trump during a Washington visit, as U.S.-Tehran talks resume amid heightened tensions. Cuba signals openness to U.S. dialogue, but rejects regime change talks, even as Trump ramps up pressure through sanctions and policy shifts. These developments come as Europe scrambles for security pacts, wary of shifting U.S. priorities under the administration. Domestically, the NYPD's crackdown on NYU encampments led to arrests, highlighting campus tensions bleeding into broader public safety concerns. Shifting to the tech sector, where innovation meets regulation under the Trump administration, a new U.S. ban on Chinese software in connected cars is forcing a massive industry overhaul, with automakers like Ford and GM scrambling to comply by 2027. The Commerce Department cited national security risks from data collection, impacting giants like Huawei, and potentially raising vehicle prices by $300 to $1,000 per unit. Apple continues dominating the smartphone market with record U.S. share, widening the gap over Samsung while teasing CarPlay expansions to AI assistants like ChatGPT and Gemini. xAI's Grok Imagine 1 just launched, generating 720p videos in 10 seconds, intensifying the AI arms race with OpenAI and Google. Intel unveiled its Xeon 600 Granite Rapids workstation CPUs boasting up to 86 cores and 128 PCIe 5 lanes, targeting AI workloads as the company pushes back against AMD dominance. Tesla rolled out a lower-priced all-wheel drive Model Y, aiming to boost sales amid EV tax credit changes favoring U.S. production. Adobe faced backlash over plans to kill its animate software, but reversed course after creator outcry, while Take-Two's CEO assured GTA 6 fans that generative AI plays zero part in development despite broader industry embrace. Police drones in Detroit are now responding to 911 calls before officers, equipped with cameras and sirens to assess scenes and direct resources faster. Weather disasters are pounding the Midwest again, with severe storms spawning over 100 tornadoes from March remnants into February, causing billions in damage across Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. Homes, businesses, and infrastructure took heavy hits, including an EF3 tornado in Texas with 140 miles per hour winds, killing 7 and injuring over 100. Flash flooding in Kentucky required 600 helicopter rescues, while high winds and hail reports topped 1,000 inches, multi-day outbreaks affecting Illinois, Indiana, and New York. Winter advisories blanketed over 200 million from Texas to Maine, paralyzing Buffalo with hurricane-force snow squalls and causing widespread power outages and frozen pipes. Sports arenas are buzzing with NBA action as the Memphis Grizzlies face the Denver Nuggets in a high-stakes Western Conference clash, with live updates showing tight scoring battles. The Los Angeles Clippers take on the Houston Rockets, while UConn Huskies battle Butler Bulldogs in college hoops, keeping fans glued amid playoff pushes. In the NFL offseason, neuroscientists call for probes into Buffalo Bills QB Josh Allen's head injury despite passing checks, and Von Miller faces a 4-game suspension for conduct violations. MLB playoffs saw Pete Alonso's walk-off homer propel the Mets past the Brewers, with the Padres shutting out the Braves and Tigers edging Royals. At the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics, Team USA's NHL stars return for gold hunts, and Khloe Kim eyes a historic three-peat in halfpipe. Entertainment headlines feature Britney Spears selling her entire music catalog to Primary Wave for around $200 million, marking a major financial move post-conservatorship. Michael B. Jordan discusses bold casting for the Fourth Wing TV adaptation, while Taylor Swift drops a 90S-inspired video for Opalite, channeling nostalgia amid her ongoing chart dominance. Halsey stunned at the 56 Days premiere in a daring sheer cutout dress, supporting fiancé Avan Jogia as queer biker drama Pillion with Alexander Skarsgård heats up awards chatter. Simon Cowell's Netflix boy band search faces insider doubts on relevance, adding drama to the talent hunt. The Department of Education dropped a bombshell with new foreign funding disclosures from universities revealing over $1 billion in unreported gifts and contracts from countries like Qatar and China since 2021, prompting calls for stricter oversight amid national security concerns. Institutions like Harvard and Columbia top the list, facing probes into how these funds influence curricula and campus activities. The Heritage Foundation's report urges dismantling the federal role in higher ed, shifting control to states and emphasizing workforce-focused reforms over what they call bloated bureaucracy. Meanwhile, the Trump administration released $169 million in grants for AI integration, civil discourse programs, and short-term credentials to boost student success and adaptability. K-12 districts brace for seismic shifts, with enrollment declines, school choice expansion, and immigration enforcement hitting attendance, hard teachers fearing deportation threats as foreign-born educators fill shortages. States eye national school choice funds for tuition, tutoring, and tech, while chronic absenteeism and NAEP math reading slumps demand targeted interventions. Cell phone bans spread to more schools alongside educator pay hikes and data privacy crackdowns as federal priorities pivot from DEI to merit-based reforms. Universities face Title IX enforcement via compliance audits, with virtual learning options for raids and Know Your Rights training becoming standard. Climate regulations face a reckoning as the Trump EPA prepares to revoke the key endangerment finding on greenhouse gases, potentially dismantling Biden-era rules on emissions and clean energy. Environmental groups sue over collapsed enforcement, citing fence line monitoring cuts at coke ovens exposing communities to carcinogens. Sea level rise threatens thousands of toxic Superfund sites nationwide, with projections of flooding in coastal zones amplifying risks from climate-amplified storms. Coral restoration off Florida sees a baby boom, but ocean color shifts from warming signal broader ecosystem stress, while Arctic oil protections fall to Senate votes. Local news gaps persist, with Americans viewing community issues like crime and education more positively than national ones. Yet struggling to find reliable coverage, 77% seek local crime info, but satisfaction lags. About 73% turn to friends and family for updates as TV and print fade in favor of online sources amid shrinking outlets. In states New Jersey's governor limits ICE on property, Florida's session yields few bills, and Texas airspace closures spark Cruz's briefing demand. Data centers' boom for AI draws local pushback despite fast-track permits, highlighting tensions between tech growth and neighborhood impacts. State politics simmer with GOP infighting. Trump blasts Oklahoma's governor over NGA snubs. Donors worry over Cornyn's primary cash burn. And Hochul holds firm on no tax hikes in New York. Democrats leverage DOJ inaction on their members, while judges halt death row transfers despite Bondi vows. Public education trends point to cell phone curbs, better pay, and achievement pushes as districts adapt to federal shifts favoring choice and accountability. Military leaders are doubling down on readiness against China, with a think tank urging the Air Force to acquire at least 300 next-gen F-47 fighters and 200 B-21 Raider bombers to deny enemy sanctuaries, rejecting divest to invest strategies that leave gaps. The Mitchell Institute cites recent midnight hammer strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, which used the entire B-2 fleet, including decoys, highlighting irreplaceable assets amid rising threats. The 2026 National Defense Strategy prioritizes homeland defense, China deterrence, cyber bolstering, and the Golden Dome missile shield, while supercharging AI and production to clear regulatory hurdles. Air Force oversight expands to 200 more miles of Texas border, enabling drone and force use against crossings. Trump warned Iran of something very tough absent concessions as U.S.-Tehran tensions escalate with strike threats, while Mexican officials seized 5 0-caliber ammo traced to a U.S. Army plant fueling cartels. Defense contracts top $7.5 million daily, prioritizing warfighters, and allies like India maintain ties amid equipment deals. Sweden snaps up $440 million in unmanned systems, Norway integrates Ukrainian missiles into NASAMS, and Brazil deploys Astros 2 for deterrence. The Supreme Court handed down rulings in Klein versus Martin and Coney Island Auto Parts versus Burton, addressing key disputes on individual rights and state authority, with recent decisions in Burke versus Choi and Howell versus Circuit Court of Indiana shaping circuit impacts. Trump v. Illinois and Trump v. Orr featured in emergency dockets alongside criminal appeals like Boe v. United States and Pitts v. Harris, Mississippi, reflecting a docket heavy on executive actions and federalism. Justices continue citing amicus briefs for historical and empirical depth as seen in post-Dobbs practices. Heartwarming tales cut through the noise, like Buddhist monks completing a 2,300-mile walk for peace from Texas to D.C., greeted by hundreds with flowers on the National Mall. Local heroes from senior gardeners feeding the needy to teens organizing food drives inspire amid division, underscoring community compassion. Profiles of everyday kindness, mentorship programs by high schoolers, and fundraising for sick neighbors remind us of shared humanity, often amplified by local outlets bridging national gaps. As these stories unfold, from defense builds to courtroom battles and acts of grace, America navigates a pivotal moment under President Trump's leadership balancing security, economy, and unity in an era of rapid change